Shio, welcome to Cherokee Kitchen. I'm Robin Callahan, Nutrition and Fitness Coordinator for Cherokee Choices. And today in our kitchen we have a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator with Cherokee Choices, Miss April Ennis. Welcome, April.
Thank you.
So Cherokee Choices is a chronic disease prevention program for the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians under the Public Health and Human Services Division. So today in our kitchen, April's going to be showing us how to do some healthy game day favorites. So taking some of those favorite foods like nachos and putting a healthy spin on them. So big shout out before we get started to the 2017 Cherokee State Champions for loaning us the jerseys today for our game day cooking demo. So thank you again, April, and take it away.
All right. So the first thing I want to show y'all how to do is make a healthier version of chili cheese nachos. So what I've got already simmering in my pot is a pound of ground turkey. You could use lean ground beef if you wanted. You could use deer meat. I used turkey just to make it a little bit leaner. I've got about a cup of diced onion and about a cup of diced green pepper. Certainly you could add whatever veggies you wanted to this. So that's been simmering for about 8 minutes or so till the meat's done. And what I'm going to add now is a can of drained and rinsed black beans, and then also a can of diced tomatoes in their juice. So I'm just going to add that to my pot. Just give that a quick stir, and you're going to let that simmer for about another 5 minutes or so. While that's simmering, you can't have nachos without tortilla chips. And I had a really hard time finding a healthy tortilla chip, so I decided I'm going to show y'all how to make your own at home. Really simple, and I think they taste a lot better than the store-bought. Typically your store-bought are fried. These are going to be baked. So what I did was I went to the Latino food section of the grocery store and found just plain corn tortillas. You want to let them sit out at room temperature so they're easier to work with. And then you're going to stack them on top of each other. You can do as many as you want. I've got about 4 here. And you're just going to cut them in quarters. Like that. And then I've got an already sprayed baking sheet. I used a little bit of olive oil cooking spray. And the key to getting them nice and crisp is to layer them without stacking them on top of each other. So make sure they're spread evenly apart. You want to have your oven set to about 350 degrees, and you want to have your rack somewhere in the middle of your oven so it cooks them evenly. All right. And then what you're going to do is take a little bit more of your baking spray and just spray lightly. So this already reduces the fat quite a bit because we're not deep frying these, we're baking them. And then you can season them any way you want to. I'm just using a little bit of salt. You could put chili powder, cumin, whatever you wanted on here. So I'm just going to lightly salt these since we're going to be using them for nachos. And then they just go in your oven at 375 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. And you're going to want to rotate them about halfway through. That way they all get nice and brown and evenly crisp. All right. So I've got some that I already made. So you can see they're nice and brown. And that's going to be the base of our nachos. So I've got our chili that's been simmering here. You're just going to take some of your chili that you made and you're going to scoop it evenly over the chips. You could also make an easy weeknight meal out of this if you wanted to. Add more veggies. Good way to get your kids to eat your veggies. So just spread that evenly. And then I'm using a shredded Mexican blend cheese. You could use any of your favorite cheeses. You could use cheddar, you could use pepper jack, whatever you wanted. And I'm going to sprinkle lightly over. I'm not going to put a huge amount of cheese. This is about a cup and a half. They do have some low-fat cheese blends, but they don't melt very well, so I would recommend just using a regular cheese. And then this is going to go in your 375-degree oven for about 8 minutes or until your cheese is melted. All right, and then another popular Super Bowl party treat is Queso Dip, which not always a healthy choice, but I'm going to show you how to make one that's a little easier on your waistline. So I'm going to start with just a medium saucepan. I've got about a tablespoon of olive oil. You could use canola oil, whatever you wanted, and I've got it set to medium heat. And I've got about a half a cup of diced onion, and I'm going to put that in along with about a clove of garlic. And you're going to let that simmer for about a minute until it starts to get soft. The thing about queso dip is they have a lot of cheese in them, which that's what causes them to be so high calorie. So we're actually going to make a lower fat white sauce to give you that cheesy, gooey texture without adding a ton of cheese. So what I've got here is about a cup of milk and about a half a cup of chicken broth mixed together. So I'm actually going to pour that into my onions and garlic. And that's going to be the base of our sauce. Just stir that for a little bit to get the milk warm. Then your next step, we have to have a thickener. So I'm using about a half a cup of low-fat milk and about 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. The trick to having no lumps is to stir your cornstarch into milk that's cold. If you stir it into a warm liquid, if I was to add this into my pot, I'd have a lot of lumps. So I'm going to add that to my milk, and I'm just going to whisk it until it's all mixed together. Once you've got that all mixed up, my milk's starting to simmer, so I'm going to pour this in, and you're going to let it come to just a gentle boil. And that's going to thicken your queso dip. Once that's starting to get a little thicker, about the consistency of a dip that you could dip chips in, then what I've got here are our seasonings. This is just a can of Rotel. You could use no salt added diced tomatoes with some green chilies. If you don't want any heat, you don't want those chilies, you could just do plain tomatoes. But I've got some Rotel here, and I'm going to add that in. This is about 2 tablespoons of lime juice. This would be equivalent to about the juice you would get out of 1 whole lime. So you could use fresh lime juice, or you could use the bottled like I'm using today. You're going to add that in. And then this, got to have a little bit of heat in our queso dip. So I'm using a mild chili powder, but you could use a spicy chili powder if you wanted. The recipe also calls for a little bit of cayenne. That's optional, depends on how much heat you want. So I'm just going to add that in. You're going to let all that simmer for about another minute, and then you're going to actually want to turn the heat down to low, because with your last step, course, in queso dip, it wouldn't be queso dip without cheese. So I've got about 1.5 cups of a Mexican blend cheese that I'm going to add to my mixture. So leave your stove on low, let the cheese melt, give it a good stir, and then put in your serving bowl and serve warm. And you can serve it with our homemade baked tortilla chips that we just got done making. All right, our queso dip is all done, so I'm going to put it in a bowl. We serve it warm with our homemade chips, and then I'll show you how to garnish our nachos that are also finished.
I love nachos. One of my favorite things about nachos is that you can make it just the way you like it. So what's our final step with our nachos today?
Well, so we're going to add garnish, and really you could add anything you wanted to. I like a little heat with mine, but certainly some of these ingredients are optional. So just for a little bit of color, we've got some grape tomatoes here that we could add. You could sprinkle them on top just for some added color, plus that just adds more veggies. I like onions. This is also optional, so I've got a little bit of diced green onions that you could just sprinkle on top. Again, a little bit of color there.
So pretty.
One of my favorite herbs is cilantro, so I've got some fresh cilantro. Really adds a good Latin flavor. Also makes it look really pretty.
It's usually right by the parsley. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. But
look at the labels.
But it tastes a lot different, so make sure to grab the cilantro, not the parsley.
And then this is definitely optional. This would be what I would put on mine personally, but I love jalapeno peppers. You could use any pepper you wanted. You could put a little bit more bell pepper if you wanted. The trick to jalapenos, if you want to make them a little bit milder as you're cutting, if you'll cut out the membrane and the seeds, that's where actually most of the heat is at. So that just gives it some great flavor. And then of course we've got salsa, hot sauce, whatever topping you wanted. You could use some light sour cream as well. Would go really good. I've got some jarred salsa there. You could use whatever you liked, but certainly it's really easy to make your own, and sometimes that's going to save you on a lot of salt. That's the unfortunate thing about a lot of the jarred salsas, is they have a lot of salt.
Now, in April, you have a great recipe for salsa, right? Right on the website link that you can click on.
Yep, check it out. You can make it right in your blender. Super easy.
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today, April. And thank you all so much for joining us here on the Cherokee Kitchens with our healthy game day Super Bowl makeovers. So if you'd like more information about any of the health information that we offer here at Cherokee Choices, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, please contact us. On behalf of Cherokee Choices and the EBCI Communications team, we thank you for joining us today, and we thank you for making Cherokee a healthier place to live, work, and play. Shki.